It is IB Nation Sports Talk, and we are up and rolling into a brand new week. Hopefully, Vince can still hear me on his end. Oh, yes, he's shaking his head. Yes, that's a good sign. That's a good sign. Technology is fun when it cooperates, and today was one of those days. Trying to get the old show fired up on
all
the
this
back end.
expensive equipment. It's not working at all.
Yep.
So,
you gotta love it.
Who knew?
Just blow it all up. That's what you got to do.
Yep. Yeah. Here we are. Whatever. Let's go.
All right.
All right.
Exciting weekend. Fun weekend. We're going to talk some Notre Dame women's basketball first. We do still have a lot of Notre Dame football that we're going to talk in rapid fire as well. But with Notre Dame headed back to the Sweet 16, we're going to start with that. I got to tell you, Vince, it was very, you as a famed skunk bear hater, it was a very satisfying day yesterday, just watching Notre Dame pound Michigan into the hardwoods. 76-55 really was not even as close as that. The 21 point. Notre Dame got outscored 15-1, with the walk-ons and reserves and everybody in to close the game. So think about that. They still won by 21 points. They easily could have won by probably 50, if they just kept everybody in and kept the pedal down. But a very nice ending to the weekend to head back to the Sweet 16.
Yeah, it was pretty much over after the first quarter. I mean, they shot 75%, I think, from the field in the first quarter. They were up by 20 after the first quarter, and it was like, you know what, this game's probably over. And they pretty much played even, quote unquote, I guess, the rest of the way after the first quarter. But that game was over, man. And it just felt like, it's funny because I got a text from my father-in-law who was there, and he's like, "Oh, rough second quarter," and I'm like, "They're still up by 16 or whatever."
At halftime, yeah.
They were. I think they were -2 in the second quarter. They were up 18 after one. They were up 16 after two, and it's like, yeah, I guess it was a bad quarter. They're still up by double digits, and there's no sign that they're going to give up this lead anytime soon. So it was fun to watch. They were on fire from the jump, and Michigan just they didn't have any answers. I mean, they tried to do that thing, and that obviously didn't work. And they got a lot of young talent, I guess, up at Michigan. A lot of freshmen, a lot of young whatever, but they were no match for Notre Dame.
No, not at all. Zero match. And I didn't think that they would be. But the game didn't necessarily, like the why the game turned into a blowout, didn't necessarily play out the way that I thought it would. I'll save that for a little bit, but I wanted to talk about Olivia Miles first because, obviously she sprained her ankle at the end of the Stephen F. Austin game, and there was a question about whether or not she was going to play. She ultimately did end up playing. She started and played a great game. She was not an offensive force in either game this weekend, but I just felt like, she just distributed the ball so well, like so many looks and really kept it simple. I thought it, still did her thing, but kept it more simple maybe than what we, had seen at other points this season.
Well, and that's all she needs to do. I mean, she is your prototypical point guard. She just needs to distribute the rock, control the tempo, all of those different things that she does so well. And obviously the first half of the season, she also paired it with a lot of scoring. She was lights out from three and all these other things. And she can be when she wants to be. She didn't need to be in these first couple of games. You know what I mean? And especially coming off that ankle. She drove to the basket a few different times. She was obviously able to explode off of it, which I was a little surprised about, to be perfectly honest with you. But she still had some explosion out of that ankle. So this week off will be nice. I'm sure they're going to temper her workload in practice and some things like that.
I'm sure.
To go. These two games are really, really important. Not that the first two weren't, but I feel like they could have gotten away with her being on the bench even. But she did a really good job of just being a point guard and distributing.
It's funny. Karen Keys and I were talking during the game, nobody wears high tops anymore. You talk about ankle support. When I was in high school, even the guys who didn't play basketball, we were wearing high tops every day. to school. And, like I had a pair of Converse one year. I had some, ponies, some Nikes, whatever they had. Like everybody wore high tops. No basketball players wore high tops anymore. She had that big ankle brace, but like no extra high top for the support, which is just.
We had to wear high tops.
Like her shoes almost look like running shoes as opposed to basketball shoes.
We had to wear high tops. We didn't have a choice. When you went to the store and you're like, I need basketball shoes, they were high tops because you had to have ankle support. Like that's just what you wore back in the day. And then, as you got to high school, you had the team shoe that everybody had to wear.
True.
And they were all high tops. Now that has gone by the wayside. Like there's no such thing as a team shoe anymore. And kids wear whatever the heck they want. And, there was one kid that played for the high school that I work at who had two pairs of the same shoe, one black pair, one white pair, and would wear one of each on his feet. He had one white shoe, one black shoe. Same, brand and everything, same everything, just different color, which I thought was interesting. And then he'd wear the opposite ones like at school. It's just different. I don't know.
Huh. Never seen that look.
High tops, by the way. They were not high tops.
They were not high tops?
Yeah.
All right. Well, so Olivia Miles did play. She started. She was a game time decision, and I've got some cuts from Niele Ivey from the post game yesterday, and we'll start with this one, kind of with Ivey talking about not only Olivia Miles playing, but the job that her training staff did, starting with athletic trainer Ann Marquez.
Yeah, I was going to say MVP is Ann Marquez. I got to give her the credit. She came back to work. They've been working on Liv for the last 48 hours, 36 hours, however long it's been. But she's my MVP, and Liv she did exactly what she's supposed to do. And thank God, she had the opportunity to come out here. And I thought she was really good. I know she's playing through a lot of pain, but our training staff has been just phenomenal. So I'm really grateful for all the work, all the late night and treatments that they've been put in for her.
And so about an hour before the game, we always record the pregame interview for the radio, and we went back kind of in the hallway outside the locker room there, and they had like the curtains up and stuff like that. So there's like there's two different doors to the team locker room, one that comes right out of the tunnel, and there's another one back in that hallway. So Niele Ivey and I were standing there, and right before she came up, most of the team, was coming up from the pit, the court that's in the basement.
Yeah,
it's their practice court,
practice facility.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they were coming up from there. Most of the team went into the locker room. And then as we were getting ready to actually, Olivia also came up. Olivia Miles came up at that point, and she was with the team Dr. Crystal Higginson. And, so they came in, and she was walking. She looked pretty good when she was walking, but this was about an hour before the game. And then I think it was either right before we started or right after we ended. Miles came back out, and she was like walking the other way. And at that point, like Niele Ivey had no clue, like, is she going to play or not? Because everything depends on how does the player feel? What's the medical staff say she's going to do? So she was like, we were both just kind of watching Olivia walk down the hallway and say, well, she's walking pretty good, but nobody had any clue at that point about an hour before tip-off as to whether or not she was going to play. And to me, it was, the way the game played out, okay, maybe you didn't need her, maybe it would have been 10 points closer or something like that. I don't know. But it just felt like that was a big time performance, because like Olivia said afterwards, she got up and she was thinking she probably wasn't going to play. And I guess her ankle was all black and blue from, the swelling and the bruise from when she turned it. So it was quite a big time performance by an All-American player in her last game ever at Purcell Pavilion.
And I think that's part of it. You want to try to make sure that you can play, and they were doing everything. I'm sure you could see from where you were that, they had her on the bike when she was off, and, things like that, trying to keep it warm, trying to keep it loose, don't want it to stiffen up and all that. I bet you dollars to donuts it was sore as heck this morning.
I bet it was too.
Yeah.
But there were some ice baths after the game last night.
Right. So I'm thinking that, like I said, these next couple of days are going to be really important for her. to get back to where she needs to be. And, obviously she'll have the game plan. She'll be ready to go for TCU and all that. But a couple of days off that ankle, probably not a bad thing either.
No, not at all. She did her Willis Reed coming out there, and 8 points, 5 assists yesterday. She had 13 total assists in the two games. She only scored 2 points in the win over Stephen F. Austin. But, again, like to me, Vince, if Olivia Miles just turns into, down this stretch here, if she just goes more true point guard and isn't even that concerned about the scoring, like it feels like the way the offense, now granted the competition's going to get a little bit better, but like if she just starts off being pure facilitator, I mean, look at the way everything else worked around her in those 2 games, with the other players, Citron and Hidalgo. Hidalgo's always going to get her points, but Citron, being a force. And then you had both Leah Tu King and Liza Carlin in different games with double doubles. And it just feels like, that's almost kind of what the offense needs as much as anything, is just sort of that traffic cop to make sure that, that they keep going, keep doing their thing and just distribute the ball. And it feels like they can win a lot of games that way.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think, they're going to find their groove. And I look, the past 2 games, I think they have found their groove, and you're getting some, revitalized scoring from like Leah Tu King and, Maddie Westbeld and the whole lot. I mean, they're really moving the ball well. They're finding each other in transition. The defense is just stingy as all get out. I'm looking forward to the game on Saturday. I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
Me too.
I think TCU, I hope they overlook Notre Dame. I really do. I hope that they're like, oh, this is the team that we saw before and we're going to kick their butt and blah, blah, blah. And that's
and we're going to get to TCU specifically. No, I just want to let everybody know we'll get to TCU specifically. And we actually got Played Like a Champion on the Champions Lounge, and someone else as well submitted a bunch of questions for us. A lot of really good questions. K-Shaw 12 submitted some questions for us that we'll kind of, get to after we talk about TCU. But I hadn't really thought about it until I think it was Domer Chica was asking like what happened against TCU, and that's what we're going to get into specifically. But it's a lot different looking Notre Dame team right now than back then in a lot of different ways, starting with who was available and who wasn't available back then. But I also liked after the game, Olivia Miles asked to go over and she took the microphone, and because it was her last game at Purcell Pavilion. And I think she made that official with, addressing the crowd after the game yesterday, like in case that there was, anyone holding out any hope that Olivia Miles was going to come back for another year. I think it's pretty much official. She got really emotional and kind of choked up and thanked the crowd, for her time here in this season and everything. But she finished with, the job is not done. And it feels like that is the most important thing. Like, this is just the start of what we're out to accomplish now over the next couple of weekends. The job is not done. I thought that was a really great way for her to end that yesterday.
Good. I love it because the job's not done. They got 4 more games to go. And
that's right.
And I will say that I know we're going to play some more cuts from the presser, but Hannah Hidalgo was not shy about saying like the goal is to win the national championship. Like that's the goal. And
she's been saying it since last summer.
Love it. I love it. Like, why shy away from it? I love it. That's great.
Absolutely. And speaking of Hannah Hidalgo, I thought this was her response, especially I love, but she was asked if there's anything that she learned about her team this weekend after these two lopsided wins over Stephen F. Austin and Michigan.
I pretty much, I didn't learn anything, I wouldn't say new, but just like recognizing like how dominant we are, especially like when we're all playing well together, we're all playing together as a team, like how well we dominate and how we take teams' hearts. And I'm really proud of my teammates for how we took the other team's heart today from the jump.
How we take teams' hearts. I love that.
You just
stuck your hand right in there and ripped it right out.
It's like Indiana Jones. Just
that's right.
Reach in there, take out the beating heart. in your hand.
Last of the Mohicans. That's what it was. When was it Magua? When he reached in and he took the British general or whatever is what and he ripped his heart right out of his chest.
Oof.
Are you a Last of the Mohicans fan?
Never seen it.
Oh my God. Someone told me, Vince, someone left a YouTube comment a week or so ago saying, stop asking Vince movie questions because he hasn't seen any of these movies.
Well, that's not completely true.
Not completely, but we're getting closer to 50-50.
Yeah.
Last of the Mohicans, Vince. This is a historical.
You learned a long time ago not to ask me music questions, which is probably smart. But yeah, I've seen a lot of movies, but you're right. I have not seen that one, and there are some that I have not seen. And I will say, if it was made anywhere from like 2007 to like 2014, like I definitely haven't seen it.
Last of the Mohicans was probably
back in the
92, 93, maybe in that range. Maybe mid 90s. I don't know. But
that was like middle school for me.
Yeah. Daniel Day-Lewis. Yeah.
When it first came out, I was probably not allowed to see it, would be my guess, based on the picture that you just painted.
Yeah, I mean they didn't show him literally reaching into the guy's chest, but he does hold the heart up, and I can't remember if he takes a bite. There was, look, it's like frontier violence, right? Or War of 1812-ish, I think is kind of when it's supposed to be set. Maybe
I get it. Yeah, it was 1992, so that means I was 11, and I'm not sure what it was rated. That's what I'm trying to look for here, but
I bet it was R. There's a decent amount of violence in there.
It is what it is.
Not a lot of language, maybe strong. I'm trying to think I don't think they were doing PG-13s at that point yet.
It's a great question. It was rated R,
okay.
But that's no excuse. I've seen rated R movies from back in the 90s. It's no excuse.
You need to get on this. Last of the Mohicans is next. Yes. Last of the Mohicans and all the Bourne movies. Then once you catch up, we'll have some deep conversations.
Speaking of movies, I did notice that Draft Day is coming back out April 1st. Did you see that on Netflix?
I did not.
Big fan of that movie.
See, I'm not a big fan of Draft Day.
I will be watching it.
I think the pace is a little slow. I felt like
I just like the wheeling and the dealing.
Story's a little weak. Yeah.
It's the love story again. It gets you every time.
That's not the love story part. It's like like the whole. I didn't feel like Kevin Costner really pulled off being the general manager, or owner, or whatever he was.
He's the GM. Yeah,
was he the GM? Yeah.
Yeah, he had to fire his dad. Remember?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. All right. So Hannah Hidalgo talking about taking teams' hearts. How do you take their hearts? You do it with defense. Here's Niele Ivey.
It's a tremendous confidence booster for us because we did it defensively. It was on the defensive end where you've seen a shift for this team. And no matter when that wake-up call happens, I'm just happy that we responded, and we know that defensively is where we need to bring our energy because especially at this point. So I'm grateful. I always feel like there's always lessons and things that you go through. So this is part of the journey, and I'm grateful that we've responded and turned the page and playing really great basketball defensively right now.
I mean, and that's always everything with Ivey starts off, like she's going to talk about defense. That's always going to be the first thing that she talks about. And they're that's always been their focus, like kind of like, what's the critique after a game? Well, we won by 30, but we could have played better defense, those kind of things. Like that's what you always hear. But it just really, when you look at how these two games played out this weekend, obviously defense was a huge part of it. Michigan scored a season low, and in the loss yesterday. So it felt like a really, really good start, again, like a kickstart into the Sweet 16 now, what they did defensively.
I feel like, in that kind of stretch where they were losing some games there down the end of the season, defense was an issue. I mean, teams are taking them off the ball, and it just seems like there were way too many easy shots. That was not the case this past weekend. Like there were no easy shots for the other team. And I like that. Like that was always kind of who this team was. They were scrappy on defense. Defense turns into offense. They got teams running, and those teams can't catch up. And that's what they did, more specifically on Sunday. I think than on Friday. They didn't need to on Friday, right?
Yeah.
But more so on Sunday, they just got out and their defense was sticky, man. And yeah, they picked up a few fouls by doing that, but they didn't get into foul trouble. But they got a lot of loose balls. They got a lot of tipped balls. I mean, they were in passing lanes. I really subscribe to their defense, man. Like that. Again, just like the men's team, when you play good defense, it's an easy team to root for. When this team plays good defense, man, they're tough to beat. They're tough to beat.
Absolutely. Michigan only shot 36%. And so I think it was Citron that was talking in the press conference afterwards about just the versatility that Westbeld and Carlin have specifically, because they're obviously forwards, but they can also come out and they're versatile enough to guard guards. And, that's what they were asked to do for a good chunk of the game, because of what Michigan was putting out there on the floor. It was interesting when they would kind of swap, both teams would kind of throw their bigs in there at the same time. Michigan had a 6'5" Russian and of course, Koval from Ukraine also at 6'5", and they, when one 6'5" would go in, the other 6'5" would go in. It seemed like, but it just Westbeld and Carlin gave them really good defense. It felt like like you said, like no drives to the basket. I didn't feel like watching Michigan's athleticism that was going to be something that they were going to be able to do much of against Notre Dame. Try to drive to the basket. They did some of it, but I just didn't feel like that, ultimately they were going to be athletic enough to do that on a consistent basis. And I think that played out. I think that, again, like people are already bringing up TCU. You brought up TCU. And again, we're going to get into that more specifically. TCU overall is going to be a little bit more athletic than what we saw from Michigan, but they pose a couple of specific issues. And Mike is talking about it right now. Sedona Prince at 6'7". She is the specific issue, and she was a very specific issue in the first game down in the Cayman Islands. And we'll talk again specifically about that in a minute. But I wanted to play another cut from Niele Ivey because, like, the defense was obviously great, but the half-court offense, I think, impressed me just as much as the defense.
We've been working on our spacing. We've been working on making reads versus the defense that we were going to see versus Michigan. I thought they did an excellent job of sticking to the game plan. And like Hannah said, it was a lot of carryover from practice. We have really great versatile scorers on the court. So I thought they did a great job of manipulating their defense and just stepping up and shooting with confidence. And Aaliyah, 7 for 7. Everybody took efficient shots and took great shots. I thought our shot selection was a lot better today. And then we got out and got the stops and got a chance to run in transition. So I felt like we had both in transition and in the half court.
I tell you what, Vince, Notre Dame had 4 fast break points. And if you would have told me going into that game that Notre Dame was going to have 4 fast break points, there's no way I would have said that they could win. But they won because I think you could argue, like, especially against a power 4 type team, like that was the best half court performance we've seen from this team this season. At least it's probably the best, overall half court performance that we've seen in the last month or so.
It didn't feel like they only had 4 fast break points. So
I know
I call baloney on that stat because not the game I was watching. I don't know. Maybe I must have just now.
And I obviously don't sit there and track it because I've got the computer to tell me, right? So but
man, it didn't feel that way.
Didn't feel like it, did it?
Now, if that's what you're telling me,
because
they had one of the most efficient half court games of the season then.
Because what do you call those steals when they scored the 7 points in 22 seconds or whatever it was? Like, is that not considered a fast break because they stole it and took it right to the basket? Like, do you have to go the length of the court for it to be a fast break? Because
maybe you have to be on the other side of the half court line, I guess. I don't know. It seems odd to me, but it like I said, if you're telling me that that's the case, then they were incredibly efficient in the half court because they pretty much did whatever they wanted to do. Yep. I mean, the
official stats, just to verify, I'm looking at it. The official stats say Notre Dame was outscored in fast break points 5-4.
Okay. Sure. Why not?
Yeah.
All I know is in the half court, they did a great job of taking advantage of Michigan trying to switch every screen, and they were able to just get open
It's good diagnosis, Vince.
Thank you.
That's top-notch stuff there.
Appreciate that. I still got it. I haven't called a lot of games recently, but I still got it. They were able to get steps on Michigan, and they were able to get leverage plays on Michigan. There were numerous times where, like Leah King, for example, or Sonia Citron, they had a step on their person, and they were able to get underneath the basket with the defender on their back and put up a nice, easy layup. You know what I mean? Like that happened more often than it didn't happen. So they just couldn't keep up. I mean, they just couldn't keep up defensively.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Notre Dame shot 51%, like you mentioned. Leah King, just a monster double that she had. She ended up 7 for 7 from the field. Like, yeah. And again, presenting matchup. After Carlin had the double Friday, King comes back with a double of her own, and then Hannah Hidalgo and Sonia Citron just did the bulk of the scoring the rest of the way. And it's you explained it perfectly, but Notre Dame all weekend was just so much more willing to make the extra pass. And like you talked about your father-in-law texting you about that second quarter. What happened in the second quarter? Too many one and done shots. It's like, okay, we've got a big lead, so now we can just do whatever we want again. And they'd come down and pop a shot up and it would miss. And then you're going back the other way. And Michigan was able to make a little bit of a run and, at least, get it a little bit closer at halftime. And that's ultimately it. When they're in the half court, like, don't just be willing to pass, be willing to make the extra pass. Because, again, not as good an opponent in Stephen F. Austin on Friday, but that was on display almost from start to finish. Just the willingness, like you might be open, but someone else might be even more open. And just the willingness to make that extra pass goes such a long way, I think. And, again, like whether or not the fast break point stat is true or not, I don't know. But like Decaf is saying, do we think Notre Dame is better when they run and gun or when they're in half court sets? So, I mean, to me, like there's no doubt that they play better when they run and gun, but you can't always rely on the fact that you can run and gun, like especially in this TCU game that's coming up, because again, you've got a 6'7" center in there, and she grabbed 20 rebounds the first time these two teams played. Now, again, there's some different personnel that Notre Dame is going to have, but like you can't always just rely on being able to run and gun. That's why it's so important just to continue to work that offense, be willing to make the extra pass, because they've got scores everywhere. I mean, that's how the whole pick your poison motto came about, because there's scores all over the place.
And that's, I mean, we're going to talk about TCU, so I don't want to jump into.
You want to just get into TCU? You want to just do it right now, since we've been teasing it the whole time?
I mean,
but I agree with Joe as well. They did look like they were playing pissed off. From there was a lot of energy that they had out there yesterday.
Agreed. Now, obviously, TCU, they're playing them in the Sweet 16. It's a rematch from earlier in the season. We'll call it last year, because it kind of was.
Honestly, it feels like it. It's been 4 months at this point.
Right. They played them over Thanksgiving. It was in the Cayman Islands. It looked like it was in a high school gym. I mean, but
yes, and yes.
Yeah. So take everybody back. Let's start. We're here. Let's take everybody back to what happened the first time, and then what the differences are going to be for this time.
So Notre Dame was up by 11 points going into the fourth quarter. And then TCU outscored them 31-12 in the fourth quarter. Notre Dame only hit 5 of 20 shots. And the biggest problem that they had, honestly, is what we were just talking about. The ball stopped moving. They just started settling. They would bring it up court, too much ISO type stuff, bring the ball up court, take the shot, and, a lot of one and done possessions.
Yeah. And
TCU just caught fire. So, so that's one, because again, it wasn't just one thing, but like from Notre Dame's perspective, it was a pretty competitive game for 3 quarters. And then all of a sudden the switch just flipped. And again, TCU outscores them to 12. We hadn't seen anything like that happen in quite some time. But the biggest thing for Notre Dame offensively is the ball just stopped moving, and they settled for too many bad shots and only hit 5 of them out of 20 in the fourth. The other one is the player I was just mentioning, Sedona Prince, 6'7". She's 24 years old. She's in her 6th year in college. She started I know she played at Oregon. I think she started her career at Oregon, but 20 points, 20 rebounds, 8 block shots in that game. Like, that's a monster game. And literally it's like one of the biggest games that anyone has ever had against a top 5 team in women's basketball. I think the 20 rebounds I read were a record, against a top, in a win against the top 5 team. But so you had her on one end for TCU, and then Kate Koval, you've got Prince playing in her 6th year and Koval playing in her literally the 6th game of her career, as talented as she is.
Early.
Yeah, and like Koval at that point, I think was leading the nation in block shots. Again, it was early, but like you had 2 of the top shot block leaders, and Prince is still, I think, leading the nation in block shots. But Koval went 0 for 9, and now part of that is you also didn't have Maddie Westbeld or Liza Carlin in that game. They both had the foot injuries at that point, so you had a really short bench. The only 2 players who could come off the bench for Notre Dame were Prosper and Risch, and that was it. So you had no extra help in the paint. If I remember right, Leah Tu King had a solid game, but again, like in terms of being able to both rebound against a player who's 6'7", who's experienced as Prince is, rebound and try to score inside, you're talking about 7 inches, that she was giving up in there. And, Koval didn't have a great offensive game, but I think it was really a learning experience for her, obviously, And then Haley Van Lith, who of course started her career at Louisville, scored 19 of her 21 points in the second half. I'm not sure exactly how much she had in the fourth quarter, but it wasn't a lot of 3-point shots either. It was either drive to the basket. She drew, I think, 7 fouls in that game. It was either drive to the basket or drive and kick, and someone else would hit the shot. She played a great game. And then the other question that was asked on the Champions Lounge, how much of a factor it was, the beach and, the vacations, but, like, it was a factor. I think I said afterwards, like, we, like from my room, we walked out and turned to your left, and the beach was probably less than 100 yards, from the hotel. And, like, yeah, I know, right? I'm just saying.
I know.
But that game was Friday. The Utah game was on Saturday. We got down there Wednesday afternoon, and like the team still practiced and did all those things, but there's no question, like the beach was right there, like I think that there probably was some of that, I don't anticipate, unfortunately, a lot of trips back to the Cayman Islands anytime.
Yeah.
So I do think it was a factor in the whole thing.
So moving forward, how do you see them attacking, a 6'7" monster underneath? Because Notre Dame does have some size, obviously, with Koval but like what does that look like now? I've got my own ideas, but what do you think that they need to do?
Play better? No, I mean
you're not wrong.
No, I mean it's one of the things that I don't get paid for that. I get paid to to watch and respond. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's kind of what I've been trying to imagine what it's going to look like. I do think that having players like Westbeld and Carlin is going to go a long way for Notre Dame. Like, how much do they match up with Kate Koval in there, or having Westbeld and Carlin, who can both, run the floor very well, how much is Notre Dame able to, to try to, just keep Prince running as much as possible, because she is 6'7", and, it's hard for a 6'7" player, to be able to keep up with that and the conditioning and, everything else, like let's remember it was Oregon State's bigs that gave Notre Dame so many issues last year, but Notre Dame was also built differently then because Kylie Watson had just been injured. They didn't have that kind of presence in the paint. But I do think that where they are right now, so Prince is going to be a big factor, but Van Lith has continued to up her game, and a lot of people have been talking about her, over the last couple of weeks as well, just where she is and the ability to contain her and not let her get downhill the way she did in the first game, I think is going to be a big factor as well.
No, I agree with all that. I think they're going to have to do a good job of, the matchups and pulling her away from the basket a little bit, when they do have players like Carlin and Westbeld in the game, stretch her out, get her out from underneath the basket as much as they can. And then also, I also like when they've got Koval and Carlin in the game together. I mean, I think it's kind of a pick your poison at that point when you kind of have two bigs in there. Okay, how are they going to handle that? You know what I mean? And then, of course, they can go small and they can run. And so I think Notre Dame brings more options to the table in this game than they did. They had the short bench, like you said. One of those players isn't even going to be a factor in this game. And so, what does that look like? How, with the way that they're moving the ball around and doing some different things. Look, TCU hasn't seen a team like Notre Dame in a long time, in my opinion. So what is that going to look like? And thank goodness they're not playing at TCU because that court was disgusting.
Oh, I hate that court. You're absolutely right.
Oh, it's awful.
Notre Dame, even with Prince reeling in 20 rebounds in that game, Notre Dame still out-rebounded them by 3 as a team. So, and again, that's without Westbeld and Carlin. So I think that when you're able to add that extra size, I would be shocked. Prince might still end up with like a 15 rebound day or something like that. But I just feel like the kind of bodies and the kind of looks that they're going to be able to throw at her and at Van Lith now because of, what they have, added on to the bench that they didn't have in that game. I think that it can look a lot different.
Yeah.
This time.
Yep.
And, again, like that defense that we've talked about, specifically cutting off those drives to the basket, that's going to be even more key, much more key in this game than it was in either of these two games that we saw this weekend because of the Van Lith factor, her ability to drive and kick and do some of that kind of stuff. I think that that's going to be really huge. So DJ, DJ1, thanks for listening to the broadcast yesterday. He was telling Salty, I forgot that I had a Jaden Greathouse reference yesterday, and Salty was asking where it was. It was not when Liza hauled in the over-the-shoulder pass. It was when Olivia Miles didn't quite reel in that over-the-shoulder pass. And I believe that I said with her hair waving the way it did, it reminded me a little bit, between her trying to take in a pass over the shoulder, she looked a little bit like Jaden Greathouse out there with that hair out. That was the Jaden Greathouse reference from yesterday. Yeah. All right, so let's get into some of these questions.
Okay.
That we have here from the board. Let's see. Played like a champion today, as always. Diehard women's basketball fan. Had a lot of questions to throw in there. So, hang on just a second. He had a list. So, whenever the TV feed allows me to see the women's players after the game, even home games, they appear to leave the court almost right away. Do they ever stay and sing the alma mater with the band and students? If not, should they? They actually did yesterday. And they don't do it often. They did it yesterday. And I think I said at the end of the game yesterday, they did it like maybe on senior night. The band is not always there. So that's part of it. I don't know. Like I'm not an alum. So my feeling on this might be a little bit different because I think the men do it fairly regularly. And obviously the football team does it. What do you think about this one, Vince?
Yeah, it doesn't bother me. There's so many games, it doesn't necessarily have to happen that way. I'm glad they did it the last time. It could be for a special occasion too. I mean, I'm okay with that. It depends on the student turnout as well. I mean, that's always something. Like, there's plenty of games where the students are the band. There's not a huge student turnout. So,
Yeah.
I don't think, just basically because of the way the home schedule works, you got a lot of games in December where there's no students there. You know what I mean? And so doing it after every home game, I think is not, it's just not plausible.
I would agree with that. But again, they do it, special occasions. They did it yesterday, last home game of the season. Question 2, is there any way we can access any of the post-game interviews of the coaches and players after the game? He says he listens to the replay of interviews at halftime, but with 2 boys 9 and 10 making noise, I often miss parts. Do you have any, I obviously get the audio. We don't necessarily post them anywhere, I think, archive wise.
I don't know where we would.
Like, where could we?
I mean, I suppose you could always
options.
I suppose you could always throw the audio into the board, like in a post. Like, here's the audio.
Yeah, that's true.
If you wanted to.
Yeah.
It's more work for you.
Upload an audio file or something like that.
Yeah. That would be my only guess. I mean, I'm not going to put it up as like a podcast. That's not really something I think is fair to the people that are like automatically downloading podcasts and stuff just to get like some sound bites. But that's really the only place that I can even think of that there would be that possibility.
I'll have to put my thinking cap on that one, because I know the app, like the Odyssey app. I don't even think they have like archived games and stuff like that. So they wouldn't have the archived interviews. And D. Saylor says there's no reason for them not to be there for the national anthem at the start and the alma mater at the end. Well, they are out there for the national anthem. So I'm not sure if you're saying they're not there for the national anthem, but they are obviously out there for the national anthem. So, or if you're just saying they should be there for both, basically. And I don't know. That's not my call.
Doesn't bother me that much.
Yeah, it doesn't bother me that much either, personally. Yeah. Question 3. This is from Played Like a Champion. Sonia Citron, in his opinion, will leave Notre Dame as the greatest Notre Dame women's basketball player of all time. I know she hasn't won the title, but I attribute that to Niele still learning and growing as much as anything or anyone. Where would you rank Sonia in the pantheon of Notre Dame women's basketball greats? And where would you rank her if Notre Dame wins the championship this season? Well, I mean, one, she plays with 2 other greats, right now. I think that there is definitely a case for Citron as the most maybe criminally underrated player.
That's fair.
Who's played, just because to some extent, some of it's because of her, her demeanor. She's definitely, more quiet and just, like 2 bigger personalities that, that she's played with, and like dazzling in their own ways and stuff like that. In some ways it gets lost. I think if you ask a lot of coaches, obviously, when you look at both her ability to score and, like how Niele Ivey always talks about her as the glue player, her ability to play defense, one of the best, pure defensive players that there is in all of the country, like she definitely flies below the radar. But like, if you polled coaches, like opposing coaches, they know exactly what Sonia Citron brings. So, I mean, there have been obviously a lot of greats. I think that Citron definitely falls into probably the top, like 12 to 15, of all time, because again, there have just been so many great players who have come through. I mean, she is really, really good. Obviously not going to take anything away from her.
She's one of my favorite players. There's no doubt about it. I think she is underrated, but it's also because she's playing alongside 2 really good players as well. So I'm not ready to put her on like the Mount Rushmore of all time Notre Dame players. There's a lot of really, really good players that have gone through Notre Dame and put on a Notre Dame uniform. So not ready to go there yet. But if I was putting together like a team, I would have her on my team.
I mean, like, just think about the fact that you've got, as DJ just said, Ruth Riley, Niele Ivey. And this is in no particular order. I'm kind of going, chronologically to some extent, Skylar Diggins, Bree Turner, Arike Agumbawale, Jackie Young,
Jackie Batiste.
Yeah, another great one. Obviously, you've got Hidalgo, you've got Miles who are going to be on that list. You throw Citron in there as well. Natalie Achonwa, who's on the Michigan bench now. Her banner is up there in the rafters. I'm leaving somebody else out from that. Jackie Young, who am I? God, why am I drawing a blank? Joel Lloyd. Thank you, DJ. That's exactly who I was trying to think of. I mean, so like that's like 12 players.
Yeah,
right there.
It's a lot of guards, by the way.
Yeah, well, because it is, with the exception of Ruth, it's guard you, baby.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
Yeah,
you're not wrong at all.
And then like I just listed all those players, and another teammate of Ivey and Riley, Alicia Ratai, even though like as a complete player, she was never the greatest defensive player, but literally like she left Notre Dame. I think she was at the, like the top of the record books in terms of 3-point shoot, like definite, like 3-point percentage shooting for a season, he was
an assassin, man.
She was a shooter. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. Yeah. And kind of had, like the same, just demeanor as Citron. Neither one of them was going to talk very much, but both of them just, kind of, would, shrug a shoulder and look at you and then, bury the shot and then go their own way, So, I mean, there have obviously been, Brian says Kelly Tripucka. So in any case, I mean, she is up there on the list, but it's a very long list of really great players, obviously, who've come through this program. Played like a champion also says, by his count, Maddie Westbeld has lost over 14 start of game jump balls in a row. She doesn't seem to be tracking the ball well and looks uncomfortable doing it. Should Notre Dame consider going back to Leah too? There was which game was it? I don't think it was the Stephen F. Austin game, but one of these last few games, like the ball went up. I think it might have been the start of the Stephen F. Austin game. There was like a double tap at the start of the game.
Oh, okay.
And so that the other team got the ball. So I don't know. Like, I've thought about it, but at the same time, like, does it really matter if you win the tip or not at the start of the game?
Nope. I was just gonna say you took the words right out of my mouth. Yeah. I don't care.
Yeah. It's pretty much ceremonial, right?
Yeah.
Like,
I don't care. It's just you get the possession first. It's not like football.
Like if they went back and they were doing true jump balls after every held ball, then maybe it's a different conversation if it's something that actually matters. But
with the alternating possession,
you jump once unless you go to overtime, and then what difference does it make? Basically,
zero difference to me. It's me. Like the jump ball is 100% ceremonial at this point in basketball. It doesn't mean anything.
Played like a champion also wants to know why Citron played the first 30+ minutes of the Michigan game with a big league. Why weren't Cernugal and Jensen put in with 5 minutes to go and the Irish leading by 35? I was a little surprised that some of them stayed in as long as they did, considering I think Cernugal came in against Stephen F. Austin with like 6 minutes to go or something like that. But, again, that's I can't answer that one.
They were slowly bringing everybody out, so they got their moment too. I think that was also part of it. And there's only so many dead balls, but I get what you're saying. If that's the biggest complaint from that game, then so be it. Like, that's fine by me.
Right. He also wanted to know if there was any emotions amped up between the Kate Koval from Ukraine against the Michigan center Grabovskaya from Russia. There was not. there was not. The Russian looked a little intense a couple times, but nothing particularly amped up between those two.
That's really pulling down deep.
He's asking about the TCU game. We just kind of covered that. We went into some detail about what happened at TCU, and then his 8th question.
Woo!
Since my anxiety is creeping up my questions a bit, let's end on an optimistic note. If TCU beats Notre Dame, was this season a success?
That is not an optimistic note, but okay.
What reasons are there to hope Niele can win a natty? And what do you think a reasonable timetable will be for it to happen? Well, yeah, I think there's a realistic chance it could happen this season, considering Notre Dame played a close game in their loss to TCU before things completely unraveled, again, with basically a different roster of players than what they have available right now. 2, the fact that they have wins over USC and Texas, who are also playing really well right now. But that's, Texas is obviously the potential matchup that you get in the Elite 8. Is this season a success if TCU beats Notre Dame? Was this season a success? I'll let you take a stab at that first, Vince.
No, it's not. This is not a Sweet 16 team. Right. We've been talking about this for a year. This team is not built for the Sweet 16. This team is built for the Final Four. Could they lose in the Sweet 16 or the Elite 8? Yeah. I don't think you can consider the season a success. I don't. Like, they didn't win the ACC tournament, right? They got a share of the regular season, which is fine. But if they go out in the Sweet 16, I don't see how you can say that it was a success. I wouldn't say
I agree.
Failure,
I agree.
But it's not a success.
I think you at least have to get to the Elite 8. And, that's bare minimum. Like, you at least have to be there. And I've said all along that this is a team that should be in the Final Four, and falling short of the Final Four would be a disappointment.
And they're not playing like a Sweet 16 team.
That doesn't mean it was a bad season. It just means that you didn't get where you thought you were going to get.
100%.
Yeah.
Look, the Final Four has always got to be the goal, whether it's realistic or otherwise. I think that always has to be the goal, especially if you're Notre Dame. This team is a Final Four team. When they play the way they play, they're a Final Four team. And if they don't get there, to me, that's disappointing. That's where I'm at.
Yeah, it would be very disappointing if they don't. That's for sure. Decaf 18 says Final Four or bust. And then he finished with, P.S. I'm thrilled with the way Notre Dame has played so far. This tourney, in my mind, the ACC had 3 of the country's top 6 teams, but bagging on how horrible the ACC is run is a podcast unto itself. Okay.
All right.
K-Shaw 12. What worries you most about a rematch with TCU? I think it's got to be Sedona Prince, the way she played the first time. And again, like, she is one of one in terms of what Notre Dame has faced this season. 6'7", that kind of presence, leading the nation in block shots, 20 points, 20 rebounds, 8 block shots. She was just 2 blocks shy of a triple-double in that first game against Notre Dame. And it also, takes, like, she's a rim protector, obviously. And that takes away from Notre Dame's ability to, attack the basket the way they want to a lot of times. Obviously, if they're doing it in transition, that's a different thing. But, that's the biggest worry to me. And it's, again, it's almost like you talk about drive and kick and the extra pass. I think if you drive right at Prince and then you're kicking someplace else, that might be a solid place to start. I don't know, because I don't think she can defend 2 players at one time.
Exactly. 100% agree. You have to make them choose how to defend Notre Dame. Make them choose how to defend you. You know what I mean? Don't worry about how to defend her. Make them choose how to defend you. I think that's what I would want to do. Make them, make them make the decision.
He says, what Notre Dame player other than the big needs to be at their best? I would think Maddie or King. I just think the key to this game is what we saw this weekend. Team game.
Yeah.
Team offense, team defense, run the floor. But, especially like, I don't think any one player has to be at their best. I think it's, like you see a team performance like you just saw this weekend with ball movement, share the ball, all those, just those little things that maybe sound boring and cliche sometimes. When Notre Dame was at its best this weekend, that's what they were doing. And I think that's what it will take to beat TCU. This is not, just because Notre Dame lost, obviously, this is not an insurmountable foe. Notre Dame just needed to finish the first game, and they were not able to do that. Again, they had an 11-point lead going into the fourth quarter without Westbeld or Carlin. And I do think that the addition of those two is going to be very key for Notre Dame this weekend.
Agreed.
Does Notre Dame's half-court offense worry you like it does me? Not after watching it this weekend.
Not based on yesterday, because apparently they had the best half-court offense they've ever had. So not worried about it at all.
Yeah. It only worries me when the ball stops moving. And again, like the second quarter version of Notre Dame's half-court offense yesterday is what worries me. The first quarter version of that offense is peak. That could be the best we've seen it all year long. Like, they just need to play close to that, and they'll be fine against anyone that they play in the rest of the tournament.
Yeah. Yep.
All right. Some great questions. I told you that there were some good questions.
Yeah, we're not wrong.
Brian wants to know if Hidalgo and Miles enjoy playing together. I think they do, because I think that they, I think that there's, one of those, because they are each highlight type players. Maybe sometimes, there's sort of that friendly competition, in terms of who's going to do what next and that kind of stuff. But the other thing is, I think that they play off of each other, especially offensively, very well. And everything that I've seen says, yes, they do enjoy playing together.
Yeah.
Because they're two great players.
You see them interacting with each other, and that's not fake.
Yeah.
I mean, that would be very difficult to fake, I would say, the way they interact with each other on the floor and on the bench and all of those different things. So, you know, unless they're really, really good at acting, which, don't know why they would even try to be. It appears like they're enjoying playing.
No, but I mean, if they didn't, and like if any one of the like you would see that, like you would see somebody snap at each other at some point.
Yeah,
and you don't see that kind of stuff happening.
No, I don't really see that at all with the Notre Dame team. They don't really snap at each other.
No.
Now I haven't analyzed like when they were losing and things like that, because obviously winning is easy when it comes to not snapping at your teammates. But I have not noticed that very much.
Nor have I. All right. Well, I think that's going to do it for this part of the show. Vince, are you ready for rapid fire?
The Monday version. I'm ready. I've been waiting for this.
It's here, baby. It's here. Fill in the blank. It's blank that new Irish running backs coach J1 Seider says Jeremiah Love needs to be on the field on third downs.
It's going to make Irish fans very happy. That new Irish running coach, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
Like, that's what fans want to hear. There's no doubt in my mind that's what fans want to hear. I don't know that that's what Jeremiah Love wants to hear. We'll see what comes of that. We're not going to get any indication whatsoever in the spring of how they're going to utilize Jeremiah Love on third down. I don't disagree that there are some third downs where he does need to be on the field, and I'm okay with that. It doesn't have to be as regimented maybe as it used to be when there was a third down and things like that. But then I want him off the field for some other downs. Like, I don't necessarily think that him being on the field more is the way to go, especially if you're planning on playing in 16 games again. But maybe the distribution can change.
I think it's awesome. And I think that it is a signal that, as like Deala McCullough was his own running backs coach and great in his own way. J1 Seider has been a great running backs coach and great in his own way. But ultimately, they obviously, there were some other comments that Seider made, like he doesn't have the complete same approach as Deala McCullough. And that is going to be interesting just to see how he manages that running back room, because obviously McCullough, with that list of the 8 jobs, found ways, to keep guys invested, and all that. kind of stuff, like they all had their own roles, they all had their own jobs. It doesn't sound initially like we're going to see a carbon copy of that, in terms of approach from J1 Seider. I've always felt that at the very least, Jeremiah Love, even if he's just a decoy, his presence on the field on third down can go a long way. But, like if it's 3rd and 7, 3rd and 6, whatever it happens to be, don't you want your most explosive player, offensive player on the field? That doesn't mean he has to be out there on every third down, or if he is out there on those third downs, I think, like what you said, okay, maybe he comes off the field, like you convert the first down, he comes off the field, you can put Jadarian Price in for a couple of plays, that kind of thing. It doesn't have to be a straight up sub where like this guy is getting this whole drive, this guy is getting this whole drive. I think that there are ways that you can still manage the snap count. And even if he's not getting the ball in his hands, he can still be a factor on the field because he's obviously someone that you have to account for if you're the defense. And if you can get him matched up on a linebacker, like in a passing situation on 3rd and long, that's a win for Notre Dame. So I love the idea. It's just a matter, again, like you said, it's spring, so we're not going to see a full implementation of exactly how that's going to look right now. But I do like the mentality that, the position coach wants his best player on the field in those kind of situations when, that's a money down, third down.
Yeah, no, I get that. I would, the only pushback I would have is I think Aeneas Williams is a better receiver out of the backfield. That's it.
Yeah.
That's all I would say.
Like you want to see Aeneas Williams more as a receiver out of the backfield is what you're saying?
I think he's a better receiver than Jeremiah Love. That might be it. Right. That he's better at him than. But I think there's things that you can do, you know what I mean? So that Jeremiah Love doesn't have to be on the field every third down.
And I think that like what Aeneas Williams showed in the Orange Bowl with that reception that he made, and I actually asked him about this at the, at the media session on Friday, like that it's basically second nature for him because he did so much of that stuff in high school, Aeneas Williams. So yeah, I mean, it's a good point. He can be a viable option as well, but one thing again that Seider said, we don't even know, are we a 12 team? Are we an 11 team? Are we a 21 personnel team? Like it's still spring right now. So all those things would factor in as well. Like if you're going to run more 21, that gives you the opportunity to get Love and somebody else on the field, or, Williams along with either Price or Love, or, whatever it happens to be.
Yep. I agree with that.
And, that's the other thing as well, is like D'Lo McCullough, obviously it's like when it came to 21, it was like, well, these are my 21 guys. And it wasn't always the two backs that I think that everyone would like to see necessarily on the field at the same time if you're going to go with more 21.
Right. Yeah. Good call.
Okay. So little Gino Guidugli, the quarterback coach, he talked with the media this weekend. And hang on just a second. I pressed the wrong button as I was looking. I know. There it is. So he talked a little bit about the strengths of each of the three quarterbacks vying for the job this spring. Of course, Steve Angeli, Kenny Minchie, CJ Carr.
You talk about Steve. Steve's obviously got some game experience and has had the ability to start the bowl game 2 years ago, and has gotten opportunities to come in and perform in live games, and has always performed really well when he's gone in there. So I'd say experience. He's also a really accurate passer. He's a great leader. In terms of Kenny, Kenny's probably the most athletic of the bunch. Also a really accurate passer. And then CJ's got great arm talent. He's a natural leader. So I would say those things kind of are their strengths.
So those, according to Gino Guidugli, are the strengths of his three quarterbacks. Anything stand out to you there, Vince?
Steve Angeli and his experience. Like that's always that's what stood out to me. I mean,
it's like you just fall back on. He's played in a bowl game. He's won a bowl game. He's got some experience.
It's funny to me. Like he's just always got this experience and he's had the opportunities and blah 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 blah. And he's like, oh, and he's an accurate passer. Like it's like he forgets about the fact that Steve actually has, quarterback attributes that could benefit him in this race, because they just harp on the experience, which I thought was an interesting thing. It was like an afterthought. So that's what stood out to me.
Yeah, I thought so as well. Like experience, like everyone leads with Angeli's experience. And again, it's not like a full season of experience. Over the course of 3 years, it's the equivalent of a little more than 4 games of experience spread over 3 years. Granted, he started and won a bowl game. Everyone will give him that against mid-tier competition. But, I like, for a young guy especially, when you lead with arm talent and natural leader, for the youngest guy, CJ Carr, that also stood out to me. Like just hearing the arm talent, because that goes a long way.
I wanted to hear decision making from somebody, but we didn't hear that described for any of the 3. If he would have said arm talent and decision making for CJ Carr, you might as well just end the competition. You know what I mean? Like that's what you want in a quarterback. But he didn't say that, so competition's still ongoing. But yeah, I was waiting for somebody to have decision making as one of their strengths, and again, it's a soundbite. I'm not saying that one of the 3 or all 3 don't have decision making as one of their strengths.
Right.
But I was looking for that. That's the one thing I was looking for that I did not hear.
And that's actually a very good point, because he listed the top 2 or 3 for all 3 of those guys, and decision making was not something that he listed for any of them.
Right. And I
hope that's not.
It's early.
Concern.
Still early.
Yeah.
But yeah, that I was actually waiting for him to say decision making for somebody, and he didn't. So
on tomorrow's show, we'll have more from Gino Guidugli about the quarterbacks. We're going to dig a little bit deeper into the quarterbacks on tomorrow's show. So we got that coming up. In the meantime, we got a little Notre Dame men's basketball news over the last couple of days. Tay Davis entered the transfer portal yesterday after 2 seasons with the Irish. And today, J.R. Knesny, the local guy, also entered the portal after 3 seasons. So your first reaction when you heard the news, Vince, is what?
Well, the Tay Davis one, I was like, okay. That was my reaction. And then this one, I don't want this to come off the wrong way. But Knesny, it was like, okay, well, now he can go play probably where he was supposed to play in the first place. That was my honest opinion. And I think JR is a good player.
Play at a mid-major, actually be a stud maybe at a mid-major.
I've heard he might be headed to Drake, because I think that's where his brother's getting recruited to. I think that would be a tremendous fit. He would be a leader on that team. He'd be able to play 30-plus minutes on that team. I never saw JR as an ACC player. I think, and again, say whatever you want. In my opinion, his recruiting class was the definition of lazy recruiting by the former head coach. His entire recruiting class was from South Bend. Like, dude, that's lazy. I'm sorry. And so I think JR was a reach.
But don't forget, like, the other guy's playing in the NBA right now.
I understand that, but he was not a fit.
There was some talent there, is what I'm saying.
A fit for Notre Dame in any way, shape, or form, and that's a problem. Like, that's lazy recruiting.
I mean, I do think that he was phoning it in toward the end, the former head coach, with some of his recruiting. But at the same time, like, on the one hand, Blake Wesley is playing in the NBA right now. On the other hand, it's not like anyone was saying when Blake Wesley was coming out of high school, this is going to be a one-and-done guy. And, like, his growth accelerated very rapidly in his year at Notre Dame.
That is also very true, but he wasn't going to get a second year. So it's a good thing that it did.
Right. But there might be some other guys like that as well coming in, just in terms of, like the kind of prospect they are. I'm not talking about, like I think you're talking about more classroom type stuff and overall Notre Dame fit.
Being a fit.
Yeah. Like the Tay Davis, I guess I'm just a little bit surprised because it felt like, he has developed in his 2 years at Notre Dame. Like he averaged under 3 points a game in his freshman season at Seton Hall. He went to over 9 points a game his first year here, and he's over 15 points a game. Now, was he still inconsistent? Yeah, but
and that was the issue.
He's developed, like Shrewsbury and his staff have developed him, in the 2 years that he's been here. So that's maybe the surprise to me.
Yeah,
that he was leaving.
I think that's fair.
Konechny, like you said, I think, like he obviously played more last year, averaged, a few more points a game last year as well, somewhat by necessity. And it was, not quite as consistent this year, but I think you're exactly right. Like, go to a place where you're probably going to have a really good chance to start. You go down a level, so it's ultimately not that surprising. The only thing that's surprising about it is just that he's a local kid and wanted to, go to Notre Dame and all that kind of stuff. But obviously, I think that there is more playing time out there for him someplace if he goes to a smaller program.
I completely agree. Like I said, he can be a difference maker at that level. I really do think that. I just don't know that he's the guy that you want in your starting lineup day to day in an ACC, for an ACC team. Like I don't think that's who he is, and that's okay. I mean, that's not a knock on him. That's just who I think he is. I think, it's like he was overdrafted. You know what I mean? And it's not his fault. I would have said yes to Notre Dame too if I was in his position. So he got his degree from Notre Dame, and now he can go make a difference someplace. I think that's
a couple good points. Like Decaf says, Davis wants to play an attorney team. And I think that's like when you look at the portal, like that's the question that some of these guys are going to be asking themselves, because someone was asking about Marcus Burton, and obviously he hasn't done that yet. But, like that's, and I'm sure that maybe, people have put out some feelers on a guy like Davis, like, hey, you can come in and
he's an athlete.
You can beat. Yeah.
Yep.
And then Indy Sailor says JR needed to move to make room, minutes for the guys coming in. And that's probably part of the decision.
Why probably aren't the only two moves that are going to happen.
Yeah. And then it's like, how much roster do you have left? And how much do you have to go to the portal again, to bring in more guys? But it's a constant thing, man. Every year, college basketball. Now, like my sister had some a player this year, entered the portal like a week ago. And, I watched a couple of my sister's games, when they were playing in the Big West tournament. Again, she coaches for Cal Poly. And like, I watched that team, and it's like there is no player on that team that's going to transfer up a level, and go play anywhere up a level. Like, So anyone, like if that's, anyone on her team, that entered a lot of players, I think, kind of have that disillusionment. And even like last year, she had a player who averaged over 12 points and 8 rebounds a game. One of her better players, she transferred to Cal, and, Notre Dame played Cal twice this season. And, she didn't play either game against Notre Dame, and she had played, but it's, like in the 7 to 8 minutes per game, basically. Yeah. So you go from, you would have been a starter for a smaller team to now you're a bench player, on a better team in the ACC, but what did you really gain out of the whole thing?
Depends on what you're looking for, I suppose.
Yeah.
You want to have an opportunity to play D1 basketball, but your role is going to be diminished. Okay, have at it.
Yeah.
It just depends on what you're looking to get out of the situation, I guess.
And see, again, like Decaf is saying Davis wants to go play on a tournament team. There are no guarantees for, what Shrewsbury's team is going to be next year. But if Davis had stayed with the talent that Shrewsbury has coming in next season, Notre Dame could very well be, in the conversation being a tournament team, and should be in the conversation for being a tournament team.
Yeah, I just I never felt like Tay Davis felt comfortable here. That's just the vibe I got.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Like whenever Shrewsbury wanted to make a point, it felt like he was always benching Tay Davis. And I didn't follow it extremely closely. That's just the vibe that I got. So, now he's in the transfer portal. So I guess it doesn't really matter. But I don't know.
Yeah.
Like I said, that was just always the vibe that I got, that he wasn't always completely happy with his situation at Notre Dame, whatever that means and whatever that looks like. That's just the vibe I got.
I was looking at one of the comments there. Scott, I'm not sure exactly what pineapple means, but he wants a pineapple call if they go 3 possessions in a row without scoring, Notre Dame women's basketball. So, okay. Speaking of transfer portal, here's what J.J. Watt tweeted about college basketball's portal. The NCAA transfer portal opening before March Madness ends, and he says same as football portal opening before bowl season ends, is preposterous, literally cannibalizing your own sport. Imagine NFL free agency starting the Monday after wild card weekend. So, Vince, do you buy or sell Watts?
I honestly didn't think the transfer portal opened yet.
I didn't realize it was opening until I saw this flood of players going in over the weekend.
Yeah, I wanted to see like what they are, because I thought it was that's March. Yeah, today is the first day. Okay. I mean, I understand where he's coming from. You're pulling news away from the games and things like that. But here's the thing: today, tomorrow, and Wednesday, we got no games. Now there's women's games tonight, or today and tonight. But right for the men's side, there's nothing going on Monday through Wednesday. So,
but you're still in the middle of the NCAA tournament, even though there's no games for the next few. Like, what benefit is it to opening the portal now rather than just waiting until April 7th when the season is over? I mean, it's literally 2 more weeks.
2 more weeks. They should have just waited. I completely agree.
Because then you've still got the rest of the month of they're still in school for like 4 to 6 weeks, depending on when finals end after that. What's the benefit of now as opposed to just waiting 2 more weeks?
There isn't one. And I would be hard pressed for anybody to find anything like that.
Yeah. And I do think it's ridiculous, because again,
is it preposterous though? Is it preposterous?
Fully preposterous.
Okay.
Preposterous might be a little bit strong. But I get what he's, like the football part of it. Unfortunately, just the way the schedule lays out, there's just no way they're ever going to be able to fix that, because you've got to give them the chance to get in the portal and then get to their next school before the spring semester starts, if that's what they want to do, so they can be with their new team. There's just no way around that. Like, you can't wait until January 1st to open it. Now you've got, playoff teams and all that stuff, and they can still go in the portal late. But, by the time Notre Dame and Ohio State played in the national championship game, school had already started. The spring semester had already started for those players.
So obviously this is never going to happen. John says, what if you're starting 5 players enter the transfer portal and you have to play a game? The starting 5 are not going to transfer out when you're into the Sweet 16. Like, that's not going to happen.
Right.
But there could be a team that's still actively playing that has a bench player enter the portal. Like, that could happen.
It's more likely that it's going to be a bench player who's not happy with his playing time who wants to head out rather than a starter, probably.
So that
if you're going deep in the tournament.
Yeah. And most coaches, once you enter the portal, are like, see ya. But it might be a case where, okay, well, you're entering the portal. We still need you on the bench. So you're still going to be a member of the team.
Right.
I mean,
but look at, was it Prabula, the Penn State backup quarterback? Remember that whole situation? Yeah. What I found odd about that.
Team, though.
What's that?
He left the team, though, didn't he?
Right. And that's what I'm saying. Like, in the way James Franklin was railing on the system for all that. But then after, he went after the system for saying, well, this is what's got to happen because, he wants to go and have a chance to play. Well, they kept, once for the teams that were in the playoffs, they extended the portal period basically for them. So he didn't have to leave when he left.
I think he just wanted to be able to go to another school in the spring. Yeah. Like you said, like the spring semester. But yeah, I mean, they didn't have to. Bunch of Notre Dame players jumped into the portal after the season was over. Guys that were playing for Notre Dame jumped in the portal. that could definitely happen. And the portal for basketball obviously lasts until after, like it's open for a month, which if you're going to jump in the portal, it doesn't need to be open for a month. Like you don't need a month to make that decision. So it should start.
It just has to be open for a couple weeks because then your name just stays in the portal, and then you're going into summer, and you can still decide to transfer once the portal is, or once you're in the portal. It's not like you have to have a destination before the portal closes. Like portal closes, but your name is in it, and then over the the course of the summer, if a team decides they want you, you can still transfer there.
Like I would be fine if the portal was a couple of weeks. You started the Tuesday after the national championship game. It's open for 2 weeks, and you call it a day. Like it could still end on the 22nd, and it starts the Tuesday after the championship game. That's 2 weeks. If you're going in the portal, you don't need more than 2 weeks to figure it out and get your name in. A month is too long, in my opinion. A month is too long. So
I agree.
Get it to the end of the season.
I agree. Fill in the blank. It's blank that McNeese State basketball manager Amir Aura Khan and his boombox became the breakout star of the opening weekend of the NCAA tournament.
Did you see that he's transferring to NC State with his coach?
He is.
Yeah.
Coach is going to NC State. Aura is going with him.
I think that's awesome. You know what? I think it's freaking great. He's signing NIL deals. He's doing his thing. And this is the dorkiest looking guy on the planet.
He is, man. But the players seem to love him.
Love it. I love it, man. I think it's fantastic. I hope his shtick works at NC State because obviously he had something going at McNeese State. So I hope it works out for him. But I see that's what the tournament is all about. It's the small schools. It's the silliness that kind of goes along with. Like, I'm all for it. I think it's fantastic.
I think so too. And it's like I had never heard of this guy until I think Thursday when McNeese was playing whoever they were playing. They won their first round game. I can't remember even who they played now at this point, but they started talking about him, and I had never seen this thing. Apparently it blew up a few weeks back on social media, and it just blew right past me. But as of Thursday, I think he had 3 NIL deals. By the end of the weekend, he had 10. He had Buffalo Wild Wings, Tick Pick, Tops, Insomnia Cookies, PSD, Formula Bot AI, TurboTax, Fortnite, Rock'em Socks, and GLD Chains. And I thought that I heard that Under Armour was like in there with him as well. But I don't know if NC State's an Under Armour school, so Under Armour might be bailing out if he's going to NC State. But he was getting like over $100,000, man. The manager, $100,000. These managers got to up their game.
I love it, man. I hope it opens the door for more managers. All right. I think this is awesome. I'm all for it. He found his shtick and he's sticking with it, and he's making all kinds of coin, making more money than you and me. So good for him.
Yeah. Yeah. This is Decaf says NIL has killed the mid majors in the NCAA tournament. And that's like not just NIL, but the transfer portal, because
it's the portal.
What, and I've been thinking, like going back to, like my sister, it's like, it's harder than ever to be a mid-major coach now because, you get a player who has a halfway decent season and the first thing they want to do is jump to a higher level, whether it's NIL or just the portal and the ability to go play someplace else. The reason these mid-majors have, like why 1 or 2 has always popped up every year and made a run is because you typically have a bunch of seniors who played together for 4 years.
Yeah.
And, so like they were a more cohesive unit than some of these bigger schools. And now they're not staying together for 4 years because again, the player gets good and he's going to jump ship right away. He or she, whether it's men's or women's, and go play someplace else. So yeah, that's absolutely it. The portal, it's the portal that's I don't think we're going to see these mid majors make the kind of runs like we've become accustomed to seeing because of the portal now.
Yeah. And I mean, NIL has something to do with it. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
The ease of transferring now with the portal.
That's the biggest thing.
Just makes it that much.
I'm good. I can go play for a bigger and better team.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
And obviously in many cases, NIL money will come along with it. That helps, but it's also had an impact on the big programs as well, because look at the traditional powers like North Carolina and Kansas and Kentucky. Like where are they right now?
Right.
Like they've, like to varying degrees, like the portal has spread out a lot of the talent to other teams and other, look at the whole SEC, with a bunch of non-traditional teams dominating in the SEC, and the portal and NIL are obviously a big part of that.
It's the same in all major sports, right? Basketball, football. I mean, the mid-majors are now minor leagues for the Power Four teams. I mean, that just is what it is. If you've got a kid who is doing some studly things at a MAC school, they're out. Like they're gone. They're gonna go to a Big Ten school or whatever their regional school is. Like that. That's just what's going to happen. And that's what happens when you have the portal and you have NIL and you have all of these different things, that you're just going to rob these smaller schools every time. And there just happens to be more basketball schools to rob from than there are football schools, but the same thing's happening.
Yeah, exactly. Joe wants to know if I'm going to Alaska because of my shirt. This is not the Alaska symbol. This is the California symbol. I got this when I was on vacation in California a couple years ago.
Pretty sure the Alaska symbol is like the Little Dipper or something. Like it's just a bunch of stars on a blue flag. Like that's all the Alaska flag is.
Right.
So
fill in the blank. It's blank that with multiple teams interested in his services, Aaron Rodgers has not decided if or where he will play this season.
It's painful. Like I realize how important the quarterback position is and all of that. Aaron Rodgers just needs to hang it up, go find a dark hole somewhere and do his, his dark therapy and just kind of be elsewhere. Because no team that's interested in him is any good. So he's not the difference. Like, I guess that's my biggest thing. Like, you're not the difference, my man. So what are you waiting for? If you really insist on playing, just pick a team out of a hat, call it a day, because you're probably going to be 500. You're not going to make the playoffs, and we're going to have to hear about you all season, and I don't want to.
Yeah, he wants the attention. I think that he thrives on, he just likes the fact that people are talking about him. And because
nailed it,
he's slow playing this whole thing, people are talking about him, and he likes to sit back and have people talk about him, and his name is out there. And, is he going to go to New York? Is he going to go to Pittsburgh? Minnesota was out there for a while. I think that that's it at the end of the day. Like,
there's no guarantee he would start in Minnesota because they love the McCarthy kid.
Yeah, I think Minnesota's off the table, but yeah, and that's ultimately, like probably why it's off the table, because he didn't just want to go there and be a mentor or whatever,
Right.
But he's definitely narcissistic.
Oh yeah,
DJ. That's like, he may very well, wait a month and say, "Oh, I'm going to retire," but it's just. In the meantime, he's fully content to have people talk about him and keep his name out there, so that he can come out at one point. So, well, this person was saying this and this person, because he likes that as well, like to be the naysayer and just have the constant chip on his shoulder. And
like I could very well see him doing the whole Brett Favre thing where he holds out until, after training camp. And then just kind of saunters way in, Oh, I could definitely see that. We're not going to hear the end of this until, August, unfortunately.
You're probably right. Or at least, like July, once camps roll around or whatever.
Which is totally holding teams hostage, because if you don't know what your quarterback position is, like going into the draft and, free agency, like all of those different things, on the off chance that
how are you going to build a team that would actually help you,
Like, Pittsburgh, for example, do they have a quarterback under contract right now?
I don't think they do.
So, I mean,
because Justin Fields already left.
Yeah.
Russell Wilson's not under contract. And that's the other thing is, like, if Aaron Rodgers decides he's not going to Pittsburgh, it probably puts Russell Wilson back in play, even though the Steelers, I don't think, really want him ultimately. Is Mason Rudolph still there? John, I thought Mason Rudolph went someplace else last year. I don't know. I think you're a Yinzer, so you would know better than me. But I didn't think Mason Rudolph was still there. But if Mason Rudolph is your option, then like, is that really an option either? So maybe that is their only guy. I think your question was, do they have a quarterback under contract? So if it's Mason Rudolph, well,
I think it is. I think he is still
good
under
luck,
contract
Steelers.
for the Steelers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I said, for some reason, I thought he went someplace else last year, but apparently he's back. So Archer said he came back. So it sounds like maybe they signed him back this offseason.
Oh yeah, it says off. There's an article from 3 days ago grading every Steelers offseason move so far, from DK Metcalf to Mason Rudolph.
There you go. Went to the Titans last year, but returned this offseason. So he was someplace else last year. All right. Well, that's going to do it for tonight. Again, we're going to have some more football talk. Tomorrow we'll have plenty of comments from Gino Guidugli on Notre Dame's quarterback competition this spring. We're going to get over to Notre Dame again this Wednesday morning, watch a little practice. And, yeah, a little practice being the key word, and some post-practice interviews and stuff like that as well. So that's going to do it for today. Have a great one. Hit that like button before you leave, if you would. We, of course, do appreciate it. And we'll talk to you tomorrow on Ivey Nation Sports Talk.